Soon Hitler's banners would fly over every street. Horst Wessel's prediction for the future was indeed correct, with the image of grandiose classical architecture scattered with swastikas and the Reichsadler becoming an everyday sight in Nazi Germany. Symbolism and spectacle themselves were both hallmarks of the Nazi regime, with these influencing modern understandings of the Third Reich, its aims and ideological base. Whether through the martyrisation of political figures, classical architecture connecting the Reich to the past, or the potent deployment of symbols such as the swastika, the Nazis successfully utilised these as a tool to assert political messaging, enforcing conformity with the regime and its ideological views. A unique element I have observed and will present in this video is the interesting angle of time in Nazi symbolism. Different periods of Nazi rule all had different messaging needing to be presented. As a result, symbols, despite their core meanings, often had an evolved meaning, which changed as the regime itself developed. The three main periods in which I have observed that shows this are pre-Nazi power, Nazis in power until 1939, and finally during the war. This series of videos will follow three different types of symbol: physical symbolism, martyrdom, and architecture. This video in particular will be focusing on the Nazis' use of physical symbolism. Physical symbolism, an important cornerstone when political messaging is concerned. Like the politicians of today's world, the Nazis also understood this, with many of their physical symbols and emblems becoming a reminder of the horrors fascism brought on the global stage. One of the most recognisable symbols of the Third Reich is undoubtedly the swastika. Deriving from the Sanskrit word for good fortune, the swastika in its origin predates the Nazis, with the symbol itself in many cultures such as Hinduism and Buddhism taking on a much more sacred meaning. The swastika historically has appeared on many different historical artefacts across the globe, but is agreed to have originated from ancient Aryan nomads. This here highlights why the Nazis found the swastika as a symbol so appealing. Its links to the ancient gave the altered swastika the Nazis' used historical lineage, linking its Aryan origins to Nazi racial ideology surrounding their mythologised Aryan race. The swastika itself introduced within the Nationalsozialistische Deutsche Arbeitspartei (NSDAP) in May 1920. However, this was not the first time the German conscience has been exposed to such symbol. In the post-World War I German struggle with defeat and revolution, many other right-wing Völkisch groups, such as the Freikorps during the 1919 Kapp Putsch, adopted the swastika as a symbol. This pre-Nazi use of the swastika in 1919 thus marks the beginning of the symbol's appropriation from one of good fortune to one representing the anti-Semitic ideology presented amongst far-right circles in Germany. When replacing the NSDAP's predecessor party, the Deutsche Arbeitspartei (DAP) logo, Adolf Hitler turned to the swastika as a new distinctive means to represent this new National Socialist movement, its anti-Semitic ideology, and the ideology's basis in ancient Aryan ideas. Hitler, in his National Socialist Manifesto Mein Kampf, highlights the reason why he chose the swastika to represent his movement. "We National Socialists regarded our flag as being the embodiment of our party. The swastika signified the mission allotted to us, the struggle for the victory of Aryan mankind." Now, as this passage shows, Hitler was specific in choosing the swastika to represent his National Socialist movement. He made sure to use this symbol with its ancient links to morph into a symbol of racial and anti-Semitic ideology in which Hitler wished to become the mainstream in Germany. As time progressed, this symbol, initially unfamiliar in the eyes of ordinary Germans, became representative of anti-Semitism and Nazi National Socialism. For Nazis, the symbol became one of pride and belonging, and for their opponents, one of fear and violence. In a deeper sense, the swastika morphed into a vessel in which the Nazis could utilise to represent and transport their movement and ideological messaging, not just across Germany, but also into the homes of the everyday person. As the Nazis gained power, the symbol's distinctive look aided in transcending class and gender barriers, transmitting the same message to a German soldier or factory worker as it would to a German housewife. As the Frankfurter Zeitung of the 16th of March 1934 shows, symbols such as the swastika could be broadcast into the everyday setting, allowing people to fully participate in national social political messaging, and allowing for this to permeate into the everyday lives of ordinary Germans. Later periods of Nazi rule, specifically the end of World War II, the swastika became an embodiment of the regime itself, representing not just its ideology, but also its past actions and atrocities. For the most dedicated Nazi, which was becoming less and less as defeat loomed over the Third Reich, this acted as a source of twisted pride in the atrocities they enabled and participated in. For many other Nazis, it became a label, one in which they wished to hide in order to escape justice for their crimes. Even in the modern day, the symbol remains one of contention, representing both its sacred meaning to the cultures it's appropriated from, but also as a stark reminder of the dangers the ideas of fascism and nationalism pose to the world and its people. Moving on from the background of the swastika, the visual design of the symbol is also noteworthy. Firstly, the prominence of the swastika on the flag is key, as this being at the very centre shows the importance both the symbol and the ideological message it has been assigned. Another interesting element of the swastika flag is its colour scheme. The black, white and red, whilst design-wise is different, harkens back to the flag of Imperial Germany. Through the utilisation of these imperial colours, the Nazis were able to link themselves to the previous German Empire, allowing for a legitimisation of Nazi political power, representing themselves as the heirs to the previous German Empire. Furthermore, these colours are, in comparison to the black, red and gold of the Weimar Republic, expressly authoritarian and anti-republican in nature, linking the Nazis also to these ideals. Likewise, the starkness of these colours allowed for the Nazis to stand out against a rally backdrop or crowd. This sure use of flags in the Weimar Republic thus emphasised to the Nazis the imperial legacy of the colours of the old flag, rather than the new democratic ideals represented by the new one. January 1923 saw some of the first NSDAP rallies. In a retrospective account, Karl Alexander von Müller, founder of the Institute for Jewish Studies and Nazi academic, recalls one of these.
Highest of bright red flags were black swastika on white ground, a strange mixture of the military and the revolutionary, of nationalist and socialist.
In this account, von Müller identifies 4 aspects which stood out to him. Firstly, the flag was utilised in a militaristic manner, with party members and the SA using it as a show of militaristic strength. When observing the revolutionary aspect, it is important to note the context of the source, with it observing the 1923 Nuremberg rally taking place before the Munich Putsch. At these early rallies, the swastika represented not a parliamentary path to seize power, but rather a more violent takeover of power via a putsch. For von Müller, the flag symbolised this future struggle, and as a result represents a key point of development in the symbolism of the swastika. Thus, despite the symbol remaining unchanged, it evolved due to the actions, rhetoric and propaganda of the Nazis. This meaning would shift from 1939 with the outbreak of World War II, with the flag coming to represent total victory over the Allies, and a source, especially at rallies including soldiers, of national pride. Outside of Germany, the swastika became a poignant reminder of the tenets of National Socialism and the destruction and death Nazi rule over Europe brought. The nationalist and socialist elements for the symbol for von Müller perpetuates the Nazis' vehement views on Germany above all other states and peoples. This further links to the socialist elements of National Socialism, representing the everyday working German, one group in which the Nazis would successfully penetrate in order to gain power. This also illustrates that at the Nazis' first rallies, the flag was a key cornerstone in the choreography and iconography of the event. Through this, the Nazis were able to create a recognisable brand in which observers could instantly recognise who the rally was for and its views. The flag additionally served as an embodiment of National Socialism itself, representing its militaristic element, with the SA utilising the banner as a rallying point and, through its authoritarian and ideological meanings, acted as a constant reminder of their self-declared struggle. Some similarities, as well as the differences to von Müller's account, can be observed in the diary of William L. Shirer, US foreign correspondent stationed in Germany.
Hitler is restoring pageantry and colour and mysticism to the drab lives of 20th century Germans. This morning's opening meeting was more than a gorgeous show. The hall was a sea of brightly coloured flags.
Here we can see that, like the early NSDAP rallies, the rallies of an in-power Nazi party, in this example the 1934 Nuremberg rally, utilised physical symbols to add a degree of spectacle and grandiosity to the event. This excerpt places emphasis on the raw visual stimulation of these flags over its implicit meaning. This is interesting, as these flags, when observed from the eyes of a non-German like Scherer, propagate more into the spectacle and pageantry used by the Nazis. By imposing a colourful sea of flags, the regime was able to put on a display that is as equally impressive to the German in attendance as it is to foreign visitors. This emphasis on spectacle thus gives the Nazi regime an element of grandiosity linking to the pageantry of the past. Additionally, as the photo on screen shows, the mass utilisation of flags, especially in the city centre of Nuremberg, on days of the rally, also add another element to this, illuminating a facade of mass public support for the regime. Domestically, this projects the image that everyone supports the Nazis, and thus they should too. The international observer, such as Scherer, this perpetuated the notion that the regime enjoyed popular support amongst its own population. Additionally, we can interpret from Scherer's remarks of German life being drab that through the way the Nazis set out and presented their symbols, they were able to add intrigue surrounding their movement and what they represented. This, in combination of a spectacular display, drew in even more support, making people feel like they were part of this movement, thus in an early NSDAP, fostering more votes and party members. As time went by, flags also represented the struggle of the past, the fight for control over the instruments of power in the Weimar Republic. This again is shown in von Müller's account, but can be seen through the photo on screen. As this shows, flags became a point of remembrance not just of this early period, but a key ceremonial part in later Nazi rallies, with the flag being utilised to consecrate new standards to pass on its legacy. The tarnished Blutfahne, through its participation in the failed 1923 putsch attempt, was a stark reminder for all present not just of the ideological message of the NSDAP, but further the struggle and sacrifice its members had undertaken to seize this power. Thus, flags such as the Blutfahne were a key conduit in which political messaging and meaning was conveyed upon a crowd of people, and this one symbol individually embodied the history that occurred beforehand, acting as a point of remembrance and inspiration for the future of the Reich. The utilisation of other symbols, such as the Reichsadler, was another way in which political messaging was perpetuated by the Nazis. The Reichsadler, as the photo on screen shows, has three distinct elements: the eagle, the swastika, and the oak leaf wreath. The eagle, significant for its legacy with previous German powers such as the Holy Roman Empire, represented the golden age of this medieval period the Nazis desired to link themselves to. This utilisation of a heraldic symbol from the past afforded the Nazis the legitimacy, perpetuating themselves as the rightful heirs of the former German Reichs. This is visible when observing the photo on screen, with the Reichsadler often being adorned on flagpoles and elevated above the crowd. This is significant as this legitimacy, especially for those fond of the past, drove supporters to the Nazis who wanted to return to this nationalistic way of politics. Furthermore, additional variations of the Reichsadler helped to distinguish party member and state symbols, with the near-identical Parteiadler representing members of the party itself, garnering respect from supporters of the regime. In regard to the oak wreath, this represented the patriotic and militaristic heroism of the nation, becoming another symbol of nationalistic pride. These elements allowed for the construction of a symbol in which encapsulated the regime's ideological messaging, and acted as a vessel in which could illuminate a person's support for the regime. In addition, the wearability of the Reichsadler Parteiadler also encouraged a person to publicly identify with the regime. Once the Nazis were in power and during the war, the symbol became a common wearable item in which people used to identify themselves with the regime. One unique distinction is the effect the end of the war had on this symbol, with, for many of those in positions of power, the symbol acting as a target on them, with it openly identifying them as willing participants in Nazi crimes. Thus, as time developed, the symbol, while still representing Nazism, changed from one of nationalistic pride to something people wanted to get rid of in order to avoid blame from the Allies for Nazi crimes. Bringing this video to a close, it is thus clear that these symbols, entering the home and workplaces as ornaments and decorations, laid for the successful and widespread penetration of Nazi ideology to Germans across class and gender divides. These symbols, through their utilisation at rallies, laid for participants and spectators alike to be receptive to such messaging, making them feel part of one community and feel loyalty to the regime, through Through physical elements such as the swastika or Eichadler, the Nazis were able to form a conduit in which their political and ideological messaging was able to be easily transported across the nation and to the audience of Germans.